Discover the hidden patterns that quietly drain your energy and beware. 9 silent signs someone is poisoning your peace. Stoic Breath, where timeless Stoic wisdom helps you recognize toxic behaviors and protect your inner calm. Learn how to set healthy boundaries, regain clarity, and strengthen your emotional resilience through practical, real-life insights. Watch until the end to understand how small awareness can lead to lasting peace and self-respect. Subscribe to Stoic Breath to receive powerful Stoic lessons and mindset guidance as soon as new videos are released. Have you ever left a conversation feeling drained, heavy, and strangely unsettled, even though nothing openly bad happened? No shouting, no insult, no clear conflict. And yet, somehow, your peace was gone. That is where this conversation begins. Because one of the hardest truths to accept is that not all harm arrives loudly. Some people do not attack your life directly. They slowly disturb your inner world in silence. They smile. They sound calm. They may even seem thoughtful, reasonable, or caring. Sometimes, they are the people closest to you. And that is exactly what makes this so difficult to notice. In Stoicism Breath, we have to face an uncomfortable reality. What destroys your peace is not always obvious conflict, but the quiet patterns you keep excusing, overlooking, or explaining away. In this video, we are not talking about dramatic betrayal or obvious hostility. We are talking about the subtle signs that someone may be quietly poisoning your peace without confrontation, without noise, and without you fully realizing it. And this is important. This is not about blaming everyone around you. It is not about cutting people off in anger or becoming cold. It is about awareness. It is about clarity. It is about learning how to protect your inner world with discipline before your energy is slowly drained away. So stay with me, because once you begin to recognize these signs clearly, you will never look at certain interactions the same way again. The first sign is simple, but powerful. You feel drained after every interaction with them. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever noticed that some conversations leave you feeling lighter, clearer, almost restored, while others leave you exhausted, tense, irritated, or mentally crowded? That contrast matters far more than most people realize. Because one of the clearest silent signs that someone is affecting your peace is not what they say on the surface. It is what happens inside you after they leave. And this is not about the occasional hard conversation. It is not about conflict once in a while. It is about a repeated pattern. Every time you interact with this person, you leave feeling depleted. There may be no argument, no harsh words. In fact, everything may look perfectly normal from the outside. You talk. You listen. You respond politely. Nothing dramatic happens. But when it is over, your energy is gone. Your mind feels crowded. Your chest feels heavy. You need space, silence, maybe even isolation, just to recover. From a Stoic perspective, this is not random. The Stoics understood that your inner energy is not endless. Your attention, emotional capacity, and mental clarity are finite resources. They can be invested wisely, or they can be quietly consumed. So when someone repeatedly leaves you feeling emotionally drained, what it often reveals is an imbalance in the relationship. They unload. They vent. They seek reassurance, validation, or control. And you absorb. Over time, the exchange becomes one-directional. You bring presence. They leave with relief. And you walk away with less peace than you had before. Marcus Aurelius warned against allowing your inner state to be disturbed again and again, as if that were some noble act of kindness. It is not kindness when it becomes self-neglect. And here is what matters most. Not everyone who drains you does it on purpose. Some people are not malicious. Some are simply unconscious. But Stoicism does not ask you to obsess over motives. It asks you to observe effects. The impact matters. The pattern matters. The result matters. So ask yourself honestly, after spending time with this person, do I feel calmer or more tense? Do I feel understood or used? Do I feel restored or emptied? Those questions matter, because your body often recognizes the truth long before your mind is ready to admit it. That fatigue you keep brushing aside is not random. That heaviness is not always just stress. Sometimes it is information. And Stoicism teaches us to treat information seriously, not dramatically. This is where many people make the wrong move. They think the answer is to explain more, give more, try harder, be more patient, be more understanding. But more exposure to what drains you does not make you stronger. It slowly weakens you. Repeated depletion is not growth. It is erosion. So what is the Stoic response? It is simple, but not easy. Reduce access. Not with a speech. Not with a confrontation. Not with a long emotional explanation. You do not need to accuse them. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to make them agree with your experience. You simply begin to limit how much of your time, energy, and emotional availability they are allowed to consume. That may mean shorter conversations. It may mean less emotional access. It may mean longer space between interactions. It may mean no longer being endlessly available just because they expect you to be. This is not cruelty. This is discipline. And discipline is one of the highest forms of self-respect. Because peace is not something you should wait to repair after it has been damaged. It is something you learn to protect before it is taken. So remember this clearly. If someone consistently leaves you depleted, distance is not rejection. It is self-respect. Your peace is valuable. Your energy is limited. And the moment you start treating it that way, everything begins to change. This is not coldness. This is discipline. And in Stoicism Breath, discipline is not about shutting people out. It is about protecting what keeps you steady inside. A Stoic does not sacrifice inner order just to keep external harmony. Because peace is not something you bargain for after it has already been damaged. It is something you guard before anyone has the chance to take it. Think about your peace the way you think about your health. You would not wait until your body collapses before deciding to take care of it. You protect it daily, through rest, boundaries, and mindful choices. Your emotional peace works the same way. If someone consistently leaves you feeling depleted, your distance from them is not rejection. It is self-respect. Your peace is not infinite. Your energy is not endless. Treat it like the valuable asset it truly is. Now let's move into the second sign, one of the most deceptive and hardest to recognize. Control disguised as care. This is one of the quietest ways someone can poison your peace. On the surface, they don't look harmful at all. In fact, they often appear thoughtful, protective, even supportive. They say things that sound loving. I'm just worried about you. I only want what's best for you. You know I care about you. And at first, it feels comforting. It feels safe. It feels like someone is looking out for you. But slowly, something begins to change. You start noticing that your decisions are questioned more often than they are respected. Your choices are gently doubted. Not openly attacked, but carefully examined. Your confidence doesn't collapse overnight. It fades quietly. Not through harsh criticism, but through constant guidance you never asked for. This is what control looks like when it wears the mask of care. From a Stoic perspective, real care strengthens your ability to stand on your own. It supports your judgment. It builds your confidence. It does not replace your voice with someone else's voice. So when someone repeatedly inserts their opinion into your decisions, frames your independence as risky, or treats your judgment as flawed unless it matches theirs, they are not protecting you. They are managing you. And the danger here is subtle, because it feels reasonable. It sounds common. Society often praises people who step in, give advice, and claim to know better. But Stoicism draws a very clear boundary. No one has the right to live your life for you. Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment you take ownership of your own choices. The moment you allow someone else to override your judgment, for your own good, you begin surrendering that freedom, one small decision at a time. Watch for the pattern. They treat disagreement like irresponsibility. They become emotional when you choose differently. They continue pushing advice even after you have already made your decision. And what becomes most noticeable over time is this: they seem more uncomfortable with your independence than with your mistakes. And here's the hidden danger. Over time, you begin to hesitate. You start second-guessing yourself. You look outward for approval instead of inward for clarity. You pause before making choices that once felt natural. That hesitation is the poison. Not loud, not dramatic, but deeply corrosive. The Stoic response is not rebellion. It is calm assertion. You don't argue endlessly. You don't over-explain your reasoning. You don't defend every choice as if you are standing on trial. Instead, you make your decision and let it stand. Short, grounded responses restore balance. Simple statements like, "I've thought about it, and this is my choice," or, "I appreciate your concern, but I'll handle this," or, "I'm comfortable with my decision." No anger. No performance. Just clarity. And if the behavior continues, Stoicism offers another powerful lesson. When words fail, distance teaches. Reducing how much access someone has to your decision-making process is not punishment. It is protection. It is the quiet act of preserving your independence without creating unnecessary conflict. Remember this distinction clearly. Care supports your strength. Control feeds on your doubt. Anyone who truly cares about you wants to see you capable, not dependent. Calm, not constantly cautious. Grounded, not guided at every step. Your life is not a project for someone else to manage. And your peace depends on remembering that. Now we arrive at the third sign, one of the most dangerous because it happens so quietly that many people don't recognize it until their confidence is already shaken. You start doubting yourself around them. This is not loud conflict. It is not obvious manipulation. It is something quieter, slower, and far more corrosive. At first, the doubt feels small. You replay conversations in your mind, wondering if you said something wrong. You question whether you explained yourself clearly. You second-guess decisions that once felt simple. Over time, confidence turns into hesitation. Nothing dramatic happened. No clear attack. No obvious insult. Just a slow erosion of trust in your own judgment. Like water dripping onto stone, day after day, shaping something without noise. You begin asking yourself questions you never used to ask. Was I too sensitive? Did I misunderstand? Am I overreacting? And slowly, Without realizing it, your inner compass begins to spin instead of pointing straight. This is how peace is quietly lost, not through chaos, but through confusion. And once trust in your own judgment weakens, everything else begins to feel unstable. This kind of self-doubt rarely appears out of nowhere. Most of the time, it grows from subtle psychological pressure, so subtle that you may not even recognize it while it is happening. Sometimes it is intentional, but often it is not. The person may constantly reframe situations in ways that make you feel overly sensitive, misinformed, or confused. You bring up a concern, and instead of clarity, you hear phrases like, "That's not what I meant," or "You're reading too much into it." Over time, those repeated responses begin to shift something inside you. At first, it feels small. You hesitate. You rethink what you heard. You wonder if you misunderstood. But slowly, the result becomes deeply damaging. Your inner compass, the quiet sense of what feels true, begins to spin. And once that happens, peace becomes harder to maintain. In Stoicism Breath, one of the core teachings we return to again and again is this: clarity is power. Stoic philosophy places enormous importance on reason, your ability to observe reality clearly and judge situations calmly. When someone repeatedly causes you to distrust your own perception, they are not just creating confusion. They are interfering with the very ability that protects your peace. Marcus Aurelius warned about guarding what he called the ruling center of the mind, that quiet inner place where decisions are made and truth is recognized. Once confidence in your own reasoning weakens, something important changes. Instead of responding to life with calm judgment, you begin reacting to uncertainty. You feel unsure. You feel unstable. And eventually, you begin doubting not just the situation, but yourself. Notice the signals. After speaking with this person, do you feel more confused than before? Do you feel the need to justify your feelings repeatedly, as if your experience needs approval? Do you leave conversations wondering what actually happened, replaying details again and again in your head? These are not random reactions. They are signals asking for attention. The Stoic response here is not endless argument. Arguing about who is right often deepens confusion instead of clearing it. Instead, Stoicism teaches grounding yourself in facts. After an interaction, step back mentally. Ask yourself simple, direct questions. What exactly was said? What actions actually took place? What did I feel and why? Some people find it powerful to write these things down. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just facts. Because facts have a quiet strength. They cut through confusion. And when you begin observing patterns instead of debating feelings, something remarkable happens. Clarity returns. Another important discipline is resisting the urge to seek validation from the very person causing the confusion. When someone repeatedly undermines your clarity, explaining yourself to them again and again only deepens the imbalance. It teaches your mind to seek permission to trust itself. And that permission should never come from outside. The strongest boundary in moments like these is internal. It begins with a decision, a quiet but powerful one. The decision that your perception matters. That your experience is real. That confusion is not something to negotiate away, but something to understand. Once that signal becomes clear, your behavior naturally changes. You share less. You explain less. Not out of anger, not out of resentment, but out of self-respect. You begin relying more on your own reasoning instead of constantly adjusting to someone else's interpretation of reality. Remember this Stoic principle: a peaceful mind trusts itself. Anyone who consistently leaves you doubting your own reality should not have unlimited access to your inner world. Peace begins the moment you stop questioning your sanity and start honoring your clarity. And here is an important realization: your thoughts themselves may not be the problem. The environment shaping those thoughts might be. Now we move into the fourth sign, another silent pattern that often hides in plain sight. They quietly feed on drama. Not all drama looks like shouting or arguments. Some of it is soft, subtle, lingering. It spreads tension without ever raising its voice. One of the clearest signs that someone is disturbing your peace is this: there is always emotional disturbance around them, even when nothing is technically wrong. You may notice that conversations with them rarely feel neutral. There is always an edge, an undercurrent of dissatisfaction, urgency, or tension. Small problems are treated like emergencies. Neutral situations are framed as threats. Calm moments never last long, because something always needs to be discussed, analyzed, or worried about. This is not coincidence. Some people are deeply uncomfortable with peace. From a Stoic perspective, inner turmoil often seeks company. A restless mind does not sit quietly. Instead, it pulls others into its chaos. Drama becomes a way to feel alive, a way to feel important, a way to feel in control. And the most important thing to understand is this: people who feed on drama do not always need conflict. They only need reaction. Watch the patterns carefully. They repeatedly bring up issues that could have been left alone. They speculate about negative outcomes without evidence. They interpret neutral events as personal attacks. They draw you into emotional conversations that lead nowhere. And over time, you may notice something else. They seem energized by tension, but uninterested in resolution. That is what makes this dynamic so dangerous. There may be no yelling, no visible hostility, just a constant sense that calm is temporary and instability is normal. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. The Stoic ideal is inner stillness, a mind that does not chase emotional stimulation, whether positive or negative. A steady mind does not react to every spark. It does not feed unnecessary tension. It observes, reflects, and chooses calm over chaos. And here is the key insight that changes everything: drama survives on participation. When you react emotionally, explain endlessly, defend yourself, or match their intensity, you fuel the cycle. You give drama the energy it needs to continue. But when you stop feeding it, something shifts. Without reaction, drama weakens. Peace is not passive. It is protected by those who choose calm even when tension invites reaction. When you stop feeding drama, something powerful begins to happen. It weakens. It fades. And that is where the Stoic response becomes clear: disciplined restraint. Not reacting to every emotional wave. Not matching their intensity. Not turning every small issue into something bigger than it really is. Instead of reacting to speculation as if it were fact, you begin to respond differently. You slow down. You answer simply. Short responses, calm pauses, neutral acknowledgement. Not coldness, control. Think of it like maintaining your physical health. When your body is exposed to constant stress, inflammation rises. Heart rate increases. Sleep suffers. Over time, even small stressors begin to feel overwhelming. Emotional drama works the same way on the mind. When you stop reacting impulsively, your nervous system stabilizes. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts become clearer. That is not weakness. That is strength under control. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that many people act from ignorance, agitation, or inner disorder. He did not try to correct every person he encountered. His discipline was not about changing others. It was about staying undisturbed by them. That is a powerful mindset shift. Because if someone repeatedly pulls you into emotional turbulence that serves no purpose, there comes a moment when you must pause and ask yourself something serious. Is my peace worth sacrificing for this interaction? Often, the strongest boundary you can create is not confrontation. It is non-participation. You don't argue. You don't escalate. You simply refuse to feed what disrupts your calm. And over time, one of two things will naturally happen. Either their behavior weakens because there is no emotional fuel left to sustain it, or distance grows between you because peace and drama cannot exist in the same space for long. Either outcome protects your well-being. Remember this Stoic rule: you don't need to extinguish every fire. Sometimes, you simply stop supplying oxygen. Peace is not passive. It is actively protected by those who refuse to live inside emotional noise. If someone cannot sit comfortably in calm, do not allow them to turn your stillness into their stage. Now we arrive at another powerful sign. Sign 5. They disrespect your time when it doesn't benefit them. This is one of the quietest yet most revealing signals that someone may be disrupting your peace. And it often starts with things that look small. They arrive late. They cancel plans at the last minute. They interrupt your schedule with quick favors that are never actually quick. At first, it may feel harmless. You brush it off. You adjust. You tell yourself it's not worth making a big deal about. But when you mention it, they minimize it. They say things like, "It's not a big deal," or "You're overthinking it." And slowly, without realizing it, a pattern forms. Your time becomes flexible in their eyes, but theirs remains untouchable. From a Stoic perspective, this is not a minor issue. Time is not just numbers on a clock. Time is life itself. Seneca spoke clearly about this. He observed that people protect their money carefully, yet they give away time carelessly, especially other people's time. And when someone repeatedly disrespects your time, they are not simply being disorganized. They are communicating something deeper. They are signaling that your priorities, your structure, and your boundaries come second to their convenience. Pay close attention to the signs. They assume you are always available. They change plans without considering your schedule. They contact you only when they need something. And when you protect your time, they react defensively. What makes this especially dangerous is that it often hides behind familiarity. Friends, co-workers, even family members may take advantage, not always out of malice, but because they have learned, consciously or unconsciously, that your availability has no limits. Stoicism teaches that self-respect is not something you announce. It is something you demonstrate through consistent action. If you allow others to waste your time repeatedly, you send a silent message that your time has little value. And once time loses value, peace soon follows. The Stoic response here is not anger, not lectures, not emotional confrontation. It is alignment between what you say and what you do. You stop rearranging your life to accommodate people who refuse to respect it. You stop over-explaining why your time matters. Instead, you allow consequences to do the teaching. That might look like ending conversations when they exceed your limits, declining requests without guilt, refusing to adjust your schedule simply to accommodate disrespect. Calm, consistent, steady. Marcus Aurelius wrote about doing what is right without needing approval from others. Protecting your time falls directly into that category. You do not need permission to value your time. You only need to act as if it matters. And here is an important Stoic insight that many people overlook. When you begin setting boundaries, those who benefit from your lack of boundaries will often resist. They may question your change. They may criticize your limits. But that resistance is not proof that you are wrong. It is proof that the boundary is working. Over time, one of two outcomes will unfold. Those who respect you will adjust their behavior. Those who do not will slowly drift away. And both outcomes restore peace to your life. Remember this principle clearly. How someone treats your time reveals how they value your life. You are not obligated to make yourself endlessly available. You are not required to sacrifice your structure just to maintain harmony. True peace grows in environments where time is honored and respected. And anyone who repeatedly disrespects your time, especially when respecting it would cost them nothing, should not be surprised when their access to you becomes limited. That is not punishment. That is self-respect in action. That is self-respect in action. And once self-respect begins to take root, another pattern becomes easier to recognize. Sign 6. They never take responsibility, they only redirect blame. This is one of the most exhausting ways someone can quietly poison your peace. With this type of person, nothing is ever truly their fault. There is always an explanation, always a justification, always a new angle that shifts responsibility somewhere else. At first, it may seem understandable. After all, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has stressful days. Everyone occasionally misjudges a situation. That is part of being human. But over time, something changes. The pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Whenever something goes wrong, accountability disappears. They blame circumstances. They blame misunderstandings. They blame other people. And sometimes, without saying it directly, they begin placing the weight of the problem onto you. From a Stoic perspective, this behavior is not small. It is a serious warning sign. The Stoics believe that character is not revealed when life is comfortable, but when mistakes happen. Anyone can appear reasonable when everything goes well. But true integrity shows up in moments of error, when something breaks, when a promise fails, when expectations are not met. A person who cannot accept responsibility cannot grow. They cannot correct their behavior. And over time, they cannot be trusted to act fairly. Watch how this shows up in everyday life. When apologies happen, they often sound conditional. "I'm sorry you feel that way. That wasn't really my fault. Things just happened." Notice how the language shifts the focus away from responsibility and toward justification. Mistakes become framed as unavoidable. Conversations about accountability slowly turn into arguments. Instead of resolution, confusion grows. And eventually, you may find yourself feeling guilty just for bringing up the issue in the first place. That emotional shift is dangerous, because when responsibility is avoided, clarity disappears. And without clarity, problems never truly get solved. Tension lingers beneath the surface. Stress accumulates quietly. You begin carrying emotional weight that was never yours to begin with. Like carrying someone else's heavy backpack mile after mile, exhaustion builds, even if you never volunteered to hold it. Stoicism teaches a powerful principle: focus on what is within your control. Another person's willingness to admit fault is not within your control. Trying to force accountability through endless conversations, explanations, or arguments usually leads to deeper frustration. The more you push, the more resistance you encounter. Here is the Stoic insight that changes everything. Patterns matter more than promises. Someone may sound convincing. They may appear self-aware. They may even agree with you in the moment. But if their behavior never changes afterward, their words lose meaning. Real accountability is measured through action, not speech. The Stoic response is not to convince, it is to observe. You stop participating in circular conversations that lead nowhere. You stop defending your perception repeatedly. You stop expecting clarity from someone who benefits from confusion. Instead, you begin asking quiet, honest questions in your own mind. Does this person ever admit fault without pressure? Do their apologies lead to change? Or do the same situations repeat again and again, like a loop that never ends? When accountability is consistently missing, the Stoic response is distance, not as revenge, not as punishment, but as protection. You begin limiting how much responsibility you absorb on their behalf. You stop cleaning up messes you did not create. You stop carrying burdens that do not belong to you. At first, this feels uncomfortable, especially if you are someone who has always been patient, reasonable, or understanding. Many people believe that being kind means fixing everything for everyone. But Stoicism teaches something deeper. It teaches justice, not only toward others, but toward yourself. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that it was not his role to fix every person around him. His role was to govern his own actions with integrity. That includes refusing to carry blame that does not belong to you. Remember this principle clearly. Where there is no responsibility, there can be no trust. And where trust is missing, peace cannot survive. Peace requires clarity, and clarity requires accountability. When someone repeatedly avoids responsibility, they are telling you who they are, not through their words, but through their behavior. A Stoic listens carefully to that message, and when necessary, steps back. Not with anger, not with drama, but with firmness. Because peace cannot survive in an environment where truth is constantly redirected and responsibility is always placed somewhere else. Now we move into sign 7, another subtle but deeply damaging pattern. They compete where there should be no competition. This sign often begins quietly, almost invisibly. At first, it barely registers. A comment here, a comparison there, a slight shift in tone when you share good news. Nothing openly hostile, nothing dramatic, but something feels slightly off, like an invisible tension that wasn't there before. They congratulate you, but the energy feels strange. The words sound supportive, but the reaction feels measured. Over time, this pattern grows clearer. Your achievements are minimized. Your progress becomes compared. Your struggles are weighed against theirs. Every conversation begins to feel like it carries an invisible scoreboard. From a Stoic perspective, this behavior is often rooted in insecurity. People who are truly at peace with themselves do not feel the need to measure their worth against others. They celebrate growth, both their own and yours. But those who feel unsettled inside may quietly turn life into a competition, even when competition does not belong there. And this is where peace begins to erode. Instead of feeling proud of your progress, you begin filtering your words. You hesitate before sharing wins. You downplay your achievements to avoid tension. Sometimes, without realizing it, you begin competing back, even though you never intended to. And slowly, relationships that should feel supportive begin to feel exhausting. This is how subtle competition poisons peace, not through loud rivalry, but through quiet comparison that never truly rests. A comment here, a comparison there, a slight shift in tone when you share good news. On the surface, everything sounds supportive. They congratulate you. They smile. They say the right words. But deep down, something feels off. The language sounds kind, yet the energy feels tense. Over time, these small moments begin to form a pattern. Your achievements are minimized. Your progress is compared. Even your struggles somehow become part of a silent competition. There is no open hostility, no obvious rivalry, but you begin to sense that every conversation carries an invisible scoreboard. From a Stoic perspective taught in Stoicism Breath, this kind of behavior often comes from insecurity within the other person. People who feel secure in themselves do not measure their value against others. They do not feel threatened by someone else's progress. But those who feel unsettled internally often compare quietly, sometimes without even realizing it. And the real danger here is not the competition itself. The real danger is what it does to your inner state. Instead of feeling grounded and confident, you begin filtering your words. You hesitate before sharing your successes. You downplay your progress just to avoid discomfort. And sometimes, without even noticing, you begin competing back. Not because you wanted to, but because the environment quietly pulled you into it. That is how peace slowly erodes. Not through conflict, but through constant comparison. Stoicism teaches that comparison is a thief of clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that every person walks a different path, shaped by different responsibilities, different abilities, and different circumstances. Measuring your life against someone else's path distorts judgment. It creates agitation where calm should exist. It replaces focus with distraction. Watch carefully for the signs. They subtly redirect conversations back to themselves. When you share success, they respond with comparison instead of curiosity. When you improve or change, they seem uncomfortable. They keep track, quietly, of who is ahead and who is behind. And over time, this dynamic changes how you behave. Authenticity fades. Performance replaces presence. You stop living naturally, and instead begin managing how you appear. The Stoic response to this pattern is quiet discipline. You share less. You explain less. Not because you are hiding, but because you are choosing wisdom over validation. You stop looking for approval from someone who treats life like a contest. Stoicism reminds us that real progress happens inside first. Inner growth does not need witnesses to be meaningful. In fact, many of the strongest transformations happen in silence. When a person is constantly competing with you without reason, it reveals more about their unrest than your worth. Envy, in many ways, is not proof of your weakness, it is proof of their discomfort. There is no need to confront this behavior directly. Confrontation often feeds the competition. Instead, you disengage from the dynamic altogether. You stop offering material for comparison. You stop reacting to subtle remarks. You remain calm, neutral, steady. And over time, something natural begins to happen. Either the behavior fades because it no longer finds fuel, or distance grows because peace and competition cannot exist side by side. Remember this Stoic principle. Your path does not require approval, comparison, or applause. A person who competes with you where there should be no competition cannot truly walk beside you in peace. That does not make them your enemy. But it does mean they should not have unlimited access to your inner world. You are not here to prove your worth to others. You are here to live well. And in Stoic terms, living well means moving forward with clarity, without constantly looking sideways at someone else's progress. When you stop competing unnecessarily, something powerful happens. You reclaim clarity. And when clarity returns, peace naturally follows. Now we arrive at sign 8, one of the most underestimated signs of all. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive through betrayal or major conflict. Instead, it appears quietly, slowly, and is often dismissed at first. They repeatedly ignore small boundaries. Sign 8 begins with something so small that most people dismiss it. They ignore your small boundaries. At first, it barely registers. Maybe they interrupt you while you're speaking, even after you've waited patiently to share your thoughts. Maybe they keep pushing a conversation you've clearly tried to end. Sometimes they joke about something you've already said makes you uncomfortable, brushing it off as humor. Other times, they ask for just one small favor after you've already said no. Each moment feels minor on its own, easy to excuse, easy to forgive, easy to overlook. But Stoicism, as often emphasized in Stoicism Breath, teaches us not to judge situations by isolated moments, but by patterns. And when you step back and observe the pattern, something becomes clear. Your limits are not being respected. In Stoic thinking, boundaries are not barriers built out of fear. They are signals of self-awareness. They define where your responsibility ends and another person's begins. So when someone repeatedly crosses small boundaries, whether consciously or unconsciously, they are testing access. They are testing how much of your time, energy, and emotional space they can take. The real danger is not the violation itself. It is the tolerance that follows. When small boundary violations go unaddressed, they quietly teach others that your limits are flexible, negotiable, or optional. Over time, small violations rarely stay small. They grow. They expand. And what once felt like a minor inconvenience slowly becomes a pattern of disrespect. Watch closely for the warning signs. You say no, but they keep pushing. You express discomfort, yet they minimize it. You set a boundary once, but it gets ignored again and again. Eventually, you may even start to feel guilty for enforcing limits that should have been respected from the beginning. That guilt is not proof you are wrong. It is often proof you are trained to value harmony over self-respect. Stoicism reminds us of something powerful. Self-respect is not proven through endurance. It is proven through consistency. A boundary that is not enforced is not truly a boundary. It is only a suggestion. And suggestions invite negotiation, while boundaries create clarity. The Stoic response here is calm but firm. You do not argue endlessly about your boundary. You do not over-explain your reasons. You do not repeat yourself emotionally, hoping to be understood. Instead, you enforce the boundary through action. If someone interrupts, you pause the conversation or disengage. If someone keeps pushing after you say no, you withdraw access. If someone disrespects your space, you create distance. This can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent years trying to keep peace by pleasing others. Many people are conditioned to believe that harmony means saying yes, staying silent, or tolerating discomfort. But Stoicism teaches a deeper truth. Harmony built on self-erasure is not harmony at all. It is imbalance. Marcus Aurelius once wrote about standing firm without hostility. That is the heart of this practice. You are not punishing the other person. You are not acting out of anger. You are aligning your actions with your values. And here is the crucial insight. People who truly respect you do not need endless explanations. One clear boundary is enough. Those who ignore it repeatedly are not confused. They are choosing. Enforcing small boundaries creates clarity. Some people will adjust and respect you more. Others will drift away when access becomes limited. Both outcomes protect your peace. Remember this Stoic principle. Small violations reveal future intentions. Do not wait for a major betrayal before taking your limits seriously. Peace is rarely destroyed by dramatic events alone. More often, it fades through quiet, repeated concessions, each one small enough to excuse, but powerful enough to accumulate. When you honor your limits consistently, you send a strong message without raising your voice. Your inner world is not open territory, and anyone who cannot respect small boundaries cannot be trusted with larger ones. That is not rigidity. That is wisdom earned through awareness. Now we arrive at sign 9, the final and perhaps the clearest sign of all. It is also the one many people struggle hardest to admit. You feel more peace when they are absent. There may be no argument to point to, no dramatic betrayal, no obvious wrongdoing that others would easily recognize. On the surface, everything may appear normal. But when that person is not around, something inside you changes. Your breathing becomes slower. Your shoulders relax. Your thoughts feel lighter, less crowded. You notice a quiet sense of calm returning to your body, almost as if tension you didn't fully notice has finally been released. This is not coincidence. This is information. Stoic philosophy teaches us to observe reality as it is, without denial and without exaggeration. One of the most honest indicators of whether something belongs in your life is how your inner state responds to its presence and to its absence. If peace consistently returns when someone is not around, that feeling deserves your attention. Not panic, not blame, just awareness. Think about it carefully. When you are alone or surrounded by certain people, do you feel clear, calm, and steady? Or do you feel guarded, tense, and mentally exhausted when specific individuals are present? Your body often recognizes the truth long before your mind is willing to accept it. In modern health science, we understand that chronic stress responses, tight muscles, shallow breathing, racing thoughts, are signals from the nervous system. Your body is designed to protect you. When peace returns in someone's absence, your nervous system is telling you something valuable. Your environment matters. Stoicism encourages us to listen to that signal without judgment. Not every person who disturbs your peace is malicious. Some may be unaware. Others may carry their own unresolved tension. But intent does not erase impact. What matters is the effect their presence has on your inner world. The Stoic response to this final sign is quiet honesty. You acknowledge what you feel without dismissing it. You stop telling yourself that you are imagining things. You stop forcing yourself to tolerate environments that leave you depleted. Instead, you begin making subtle adjustments. More time alone. More time with people who bring calm instead of tension. More attention to environments that restore rather than drain. Peace does not always require dramatic exits or confrontations. Often, it begins with small choices, choosing where to spend your time, who to share your energy with, and how often you allow certain influences into your life. Remember this closing Stoic principle from Stoicism Breath. Your inner peace is not an accident. It is the result of careful observation, disciplined choices, and consistent boundaries. When you honor the signals your mind and body give you, you create a life where calm is not rare. It becomes your natural state. If someone's absence consistently brings you peace, that is not a coincidence. It is information. It means their presence was quietly creating disturbance, even if nothing dramatic ever happened. Many people struggle to accept this truth because it feels uncomfortable. They tell themselves they are being unfair, ungrateful, or overly sensitive. They search for logical excuses to override what their body already understands. But Stoicism, as taught through Stoicism Breath, reminds us that clarity should never be sacrificed for comfort. Epictetus once emphasized that the body often reacts before the mind builds explanations. Think about that for a moment. Have you ever noticed how tension fades when certain people are not around? How your breathing becomes deeper, your shoulders relax, your thoughts feel clearer. That physical shift is not weakness. It is awareness. Ignoring that signal does not make you more rational. It makes you less honest with yourself. Ask yourself quietly, without judgment, do I feel calmer when I don't have to interact with this person? Do I feel more like myself when they are not present? Does my peace return naturally when distance exists? If the answer is yes, then the real question is no longer whether something feels wrong. The real question becomes, what will you do with that knowledge? The Stoic response is not impulsive confrontation or dramatic action. It is acceptance. Acceptance that not every relationship is meant to last forever. Acceptance that peace is not something you earn by tolerating discomfort. Acceptance that distance does not always require explanation. One of the hardest lessons in Stoicism is understanding that you are allowed to choose peace without creating a story of blame. You do not need to prove the other person is wrong. You do not need to convince anyone else of your reasoning. You do not need emotional closure through conflict. What you need is alignment. Alignment between what you feel inside and the choices you make outside. Often, the most stoic decision is the quietest one. Less contact, less access, fewer emotional investments. Not because the other person is evil, but because the relationship no longer supports your inner stability. Marcus Aurelius wrote about withdrawing inwardly when external conditions became disruptive. This idea applies not only to stressful situations, but also to relationships. You withdraw not out of resentment, but out of wisdom. And here is the truth many people resist. The presence of peace is not weakness. Peace is the result of accurate judgment. If someone's absence consistently restores clarity, calm, and balance to your life, then continuing to give them unrestricted access is no longer an obligation. It becomes a choice. And Stoicism teaches that wise choices are guided by observation, not guilt. Your inner world is where your life truly happens. Not in appearances, not in expectations, not in what others think, but inside your thoughts, emotions, and decisions. Not everyone deserves a permanent place there. When you honor the peace that arrives in silence, you are not abandoning others. You are finally listening to yourself. And listening to yourself with honesty is one of the most stoic acts a person can make. Throughout this journey with Stoicism Breath, we have explored 9 silent signs that someone may be quietly poisoning your peace. Not through loud conflict or obvious hostility, but through subtle patterns that slowly weaken your inner stability. Emotional exhaustion after conversations. Control disguised as care. Doubting yourself in their presence. Constant tension disguised as drama. Disrespect for your time. Avoidance of responsibility. unnecessary competition, ignored boundaries, and finally, the deep calm that appears when distance exists. Each of these signs points to one powerful truth. Peace is rarely lost in a single dramatic moment. More often, it fades gradually, through small compromises, repeated stress, and quiet patterns that go unnoticed until exhaustion sets in. Stoicism does not ask you to judge others harshly or create unnecessary conflict. Instead, it asks you to observe clearly, think calmly, and act with discipline. Awareness is always the first step, but awareness alone does not change your life. Practice does. After listening to this message, take a moment to reflect. Think about one relationship that consistently leaves you feeling tense, confused, or emotionally drained. Not emotionally, but honestly, ask yourself what level of access that person should have to your inner world. Modern health science supports what Stoicism taught centuries ago. Chronic stress weakens the body, clouds judgment, and reduces emotional resilience. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it is responsible. Your time is limited. Your energy is limited. Your clarity is limited. Stoic wisdom reminds us to guard what is valuable because what is valuable shapes the quality of our lives. If this message helped you see something more clearly, let that clarity guide your actions. Not guilt, not fear, not obligation. Small decisions, repeated daily, shape the environment you live in and the peace you carry inside. Thank you for spending this time with Stoicism Breath. If these insights resonated with you, consider reflecting on them again, sharing them with someone who may need clarity, and continuing to strengthen the discipline that protects your inner world. Until the next time, remain steady in your choices, disciplined in your thoughts, and committed to protecting the peace that allows you to live well.